Hi, I'm Robert, and today I'm going to show you how I take this image from here to here, all in Lightroom. These days when photographing the beach, I can be overly selective when I go out. I shot this back in 2013. I used to go out regardless of what the weather looked like and just hope for the best. I should probably follow my own advice and go out and shoot more often these days. Even though I didn't have the best weather for this image, it was still a lot of fun to shoot. There was barely anybody at the beach, so I had it almost all to myself. Let's get started editing. Start at the bottom like usual, make sure we're on the most current version. I never add vignetting to my images, at least my seascape images. Let's check and see if this image is straight. Hover over rotate to bring up the grid lines. Then I look at the horizon and see if the horizon is matching up with the straight lines of the grid lines. This time it does, so we'll move on. As usual, applying the chromatic aberration removal and profile corrections. We'll do our standard sharpening of 100 and then applying a mask. Hold down the Alt key and let's bring our mask up to about 50. If we don't apply the mask, we apply the sharpening to everything in the image. That means your sky and your clouds. And we don't want to sharpen that. I shot this on a Canon 40D. It's an older camera and it has a lot of grain even in lower ISOs. So we don't want to introduce any extra grain by applying more sharpening that's needed. We'll skip this color section and come back to it. Let's cool down the image a little bit to give it more of a gloomy tone since it was such a gloomy day. Looking up at the histogram, we still have quite a bit of ways before we hit our right wall. So let's bring our exposure up. So we'll bring it up 0.4, which pushes us over to the right. Bring our highlights down as usual. Bring our shadows up. We're going to go to 65 today. We don't want to go all the way, it's a little too bright in the shadow areas, so bring it back down to 65 for this image. Now let's adjust our white point by moving to the right, and I'm watching the histogram in the top right, and I'll move the right white point until we start clipping on the white channel. You'll see up here when we're clipping, let me bring it up a little more. Now we're clipping on the blue channel. Now we're completely clipping on the white channel. You can see in those red sections is where we've lost detail and it's completely blown out. So let's bring the white point back down. We'll do the same with the black point, but in reverse, bring it down. There we go. So now we have the full extent of our histogram and we're not clipping. So everything's in there. Let's go down to the HSL panel. As usual, I start with luminance. Let's work on the greens here. I want to really bring these out since they're kind of their center feature of our foreground. Okay, we'll start with the luminance. Usually I bring the luminance down to darken colors to make them more bold, but I think in this case I'm going to bring it up a little bit to brighten it. The green looks quite bright here, so let's add in some saturation. So it darkened it down a little bit, but we have a brighter, darker green now. Let's go over to the hue and let's adjust the green also. We can make it more yellow by going to the left, and we can make it more blue by going to the right. So let's go up a little bit. Looks more natural now. Looks green. Before it had a yellow tint to it. Now let's do the same with the blue. Go back to luminance. Let's bring the blue down to darken it up. And also let's add some saturation. I'm going to go pretty heavy on it right here. So we darkened and saturated the blues. And the last thing I do is adjust the hue. We can go either more purple or more teal. I'm going to go down -10 to give it a more teal look. So we've adjusted our two main colors in this image, the greens and the blues, to give it a little more dramatic look. Now let's just brush in a few places and finish this image up. I'm going to use the brush tool here. We have our auto mask turned on. This area of the water really is one of the main features of this image. So let's brush in some area and make some adjustments. You press O for overlay to bring up this overlay so we can see where we're working. That looks good. What I want to do is bring up the exposure to really brighten this area up. So we go up plus 0.3. It gives this white water and the water in this area a lot brighter of an exposure to draw your eye in. Go over here, press new, press O to turn on the overlay. Let's paint in these houses like that. We have a little spill over here, so just hold down Alt to make your brush and eraser and erase that area. So we have all the houses selected. Press O to turn off our overlay. And let's bring in some texture here. That's good. Before I felt like the houses were kind of fading into the background, but now we brought them out with some texture, so they're really punchy now. So even though we shot this on a pretty boring, gloomy looking day, I feel like we have a lot of color and brightness, and I'm liking the composition. Here's our rule of thirds guidelines. You can see we have our horizontal lines here, which I use as guides for my horizon. I usually put the horizon on the top line when I want to emphasize the foreground. When I want to emphasize the sky, I put the horizon on this bottom line. I usually don't put the horizon in the middle line. The reason being is you need to show your viewer what's more important, the foreground or the sky. If you have the horizon in the middle, you're not showing them which is more important to you. We have our 4 intersection points. These are where I usually try and put the action. So over in this area, we have the green rocks in the water. And over here, we have more rocks. And what it does is it has an effect of looking from front to back and from right to left. So you're looking through the image, front to back, side to side. It gives a dynamic composition, leads the viewer's eye through the image. That's why we brightened up this area and these rocks. So you look first at the foreground, through the water, and then to the background that we added more texture to make pop. I hope those tips were helpful. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks.